The containment field hummed with malevolent energy around Marcus Thorne as he sat in his cell aboard the Unity Coalition flagship Resolute. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, he could see the bustle of officers and technicians preparing for what everyone knew would be humanity's final stand against the dark world hegemony. Their black ships hung in the void like a plague of metal locusts, blotting out entire star systems. Thorne's reflection stared back at him from the barrier, a face weathered by 43 years of war, marked by scars that told stories he wished he could forget. His gray eyes held the weight of Kepler 442b, the planet he had ordered scorched rather than let it fall to the enemy. 3 billion civilians. The number haunted every moment of his waking life. War criminal, they called him, the butcher of Kepler. The tribunal had been swift, the verdict unanimous. Death by neural dissolution to be carried out after the current crisis, if there was an after. The cell door's energy field flickered and died. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the doorway, her usually pristine uniform rumpled from days of continuous briefings. Dark circles ringed her eyes, but her jaw was set with the determination that had made her humanity's finest military commander. "Marcus," she said quietly, "we need to talk." Thorne didn't move from his position on the narrow bunk. "Come to gloat, Sarah, or perhaps you're here to tell me they've moved up my execution date." "The Coalition Council has approved Operation Stellar Phoenix," Chen said, stepping into the cell. "We're going to ignite the twin black holes at Sagittarius A-star into a hypernova." Despite himself, Thorne felt his eyebrows rise. "That's ambitious, also completely insane. The gravitational wave pulse alone would erase the Dark World Command Fleet, yes. We've run the simulations. Their entire armada is positioned within the blast radius, using the black hole's gravitational pull to anchor their formation." Chen's voice was steady, but Thorne could hear the underlying strain. "It's our only chance to break their stranglehold on the galaxy. Congratulations on finding a way to commit suicide with style," Thorne said bitterly. "Though I suppose it's better than slow extinction. Only one ship can survive the hypernova blast. The pilot would need to position themselves at the exact resonance point between the twin black holes and trigger the ignition sequence manually. The timing has to be perfect, a millisecond too early or too late, and the energy cascade won't achieve critical mass." Thorne studied her face, seeing something he hadn't expected. "Hope, what aren't you telling me, Sarah?" Chen pulled up a holographic display from her wrist unit, showing the galactic core. Two massive black holes orbited each other in a deadly dance, surrounded by the dark geometric formations of enemy vessels. "Our latest intelligence suggests the Dark World is preparing to activate something they call the Void Engine. If they succeed, it won't just be humanity that dies. It'll be all organic life in the galaxy. Everything will be converted to their biomechanical hybrid forms. So we blow up the galaxy core to save the galaxy. The irony is almost poetic." Thorne stood and moved closer to the hologram. "This ship that can survive, what makes it special?" "We've developed a new type of quantum shielding using exotic matter harvested from the event horizons. The Redemption is the only vessel equipped with the necessary systems." "But," Chen hesitated, "but the pilot can't escape. The quantum tunnel needed to trigger the ignition sequence requires the ship to maintain position until the hypernova reaches peak intensity. By the time the blast wave hits, there won't be time to reach minimum safe distance." Thorne was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "You're asking me to volunteer for a suicide mission." "I'm asking you for a chance at redemption," Chen replied softly. 3 billion people died because of your decision at Kepler. Now you have the opportunity to save 300 billion across the galaxy. And if I refuse, then someone else will go. But you're the only pilot we have with the skills and experience needed to thread the gravitational needle between two supermassive black holes. Your neural patterns are already mapped for the Redemption's quantum-linked control systems from your previous service record." Thorne laughed, but there was no humor in it. My previous service record. You mean before I became a war criminal? Marcus. Chen's voice was gentle now. I know what Kepler did to you. I know you've been carrying that weight for 3 years. This isn't about redemption in the legal sense. It's about redemption in here. She touched her chest over her heart. Through the cell's viewport, Thorne could see the vast enemy fleet in the distance, their ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dark world vessels defied conventional understanding of physics, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. They had swept across the galaxy like a tide of entropy, converting entire civilizations into their collective consciousness. How long do I have to decide? He asked. The fleet moves to the galactic core in 18 hours. We need an answer in 6. After Chen left, Thorne sat in the darkness of his cell, wrestling with memories and possibilities. The faces of Kepler 442b's inhabitants haunted him. Men, women, children who had looked to the sky as his ships rained nuclear fire. He had told himself it was necessary, that the planet's strategic resources couldn't be allowed to fall into enemy hands. But in the quiet hours since, he wondered if there had been another way. Dr. Elena Vasquez found him there 3 hours later. The ship's chief psychologist was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair, one of the few people who had visited him regularly during his imprisonment. I heard about the mission, she said, settling into the chair across from his bunk. Come to analyze my motivations, doctor, trying to determine if I'm seeking redemption or just another form of suicide. I'm here as a friend, Marcus. One who's watched you tear yourself apart over Kepler for 3 years. Thorne was quiet for a moment. Do you think redemption is possible for someone like me? I think, Elena said carefully, that the weight of our actions doesn't disappear when we die, but perhaps it can be balanced by what we choose to do while we're still alive. 3 billion lives. That's a heavy weight to balance. The dark world has killed 300 billion since the war began. If you can stop them from killing 300 billion more, it still doesn't bring back the children on Kepler. Elena leaned forward. No, it doesn't, but it might prevent other children from sharing their fate. The redemption hung in the fleet's construction bay like a blade forged from starlight itself. Unlike the angular, utilitarian designs of most coalition vessels, this ship was a work of art as much as engineering. Its hull curved in smooth, organic lines that seemed to flow like liquid metal, and exotic matter conduits pulsed with barely contained energy along its flanks. Thorne approached the ship with Admiral Chen and Chief Engineer Kim Nakamura, a brilliant woman whose innovations had made the impossible mission theoretically possible. She's beautiful, Thorne admitted, running his hand along the hull's strange, warm surface. The exotic matter shielding creates a localized space-time distortion, Nakamura explained, her voice filled with pride and barely contained terror at what they'd created. Within a 3-kilometer radius, the ship exists in a quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent in normal space-time. It's the only way to survive the hypernova's initial blast wave. And the ignition system, quantum tunneling torpedoes, each one carrying a payload of concentrated dark energy. You'll need to fire them in a specific sequence at precise coordinates around both black holes' event horizons. The explosions will destabilize the ergospheres and cause the black holes to merge catastrophically. Chen activated a holographic display showing the galactic core. The Dark World fleet is using the black hole's gravitational field to maintain their formation. They can't retreat without breaking their defensive perimeter, and they can't advance without exposing themselves to our remaining forces. It's elegant, Thorne mused. They've trapped themselves with their own tactics. The window for ignition is exactly 17 minutes, Nakamura continued. Too early, and the energy cascade won't reach critical mass. Too late, and the Dark World will detect the process and potentially disrupt it. You'll need to maintain position for the full sequence. Thorne studied the timeline display. Even with the exotic matter shielding, the redemption would need to be within the blast radius for 23 minutes. 6 minutes longer than the ship could theoretically survive. "What about escape pods?" he asked. Chen and Nakamura exchanged glances. "The quantum distortion field can't be extended to smaller vessels," Nakamura said quietly. "Any attempt to leave the ship during the ignition sequence would result in immediate molecular dissolution. So it's definitely a one-way trip." "Yes." Thorne was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "Show me the control systems." The Redemption's bridge was unlike anything Thorne had ever seen. Instead of traditional consoles and displays, the entire space was a flowing matrix of light and exotic matter. At the center was a single pilot's chair surrounded by quantum-linked neural interfaces. "The ship responds directly to the pilot's thoughts and intentions," Nakamura explained. "Traditional controls would be too slow for navigating the gravitational eddies around the black holes. You'll be flying by intuition as much as skill." Thorne settled into the pilot's chair and felt the neural links engage. Suddenly, he could sense the ship around him like an extension of his own body. Every system, every power conduit, every quantum field fluctuation was part of his awareness. "It's incredible," he breathed. "The connection is permanent once fully established," Chen warned. "You'll be part of the ship and it'll be part of you. There's no disconnecting. Another point of no return." Thorne flexed his fingers and felt the ship's maneuvering thrusters respond. "How many more of those are we planning to pile on?" Dr. Vasquez appeared at the bridge entrance. "I'd like to speak with Marcus privately, if possible." Chen and Nakamura left them alone. Alina approached the pilot's chair, her expression troubled. "This isn't just about redemption, is it?" she asked quietly. "You're looking for an escape." Thorne's hand stilled on the neural interface controls. "Maybe. Does it matter?" "It matters because the wrong motivations could affect your performance during the mission. If you're planning to die anyway, you might not fight hard enough to survive the parts where survival is still possible. The entire mission is a suicide run, Alina. Fighting for survival seems rather beside the point. The Coalition needs you to survive long enough to complete the ignition sequence. If you give up too early, if you stop caring about the technical precision required." Thorne turned to face her fully. "You think I'll sabotage the mission? I think you're a man who's been waiting to die for 3 years, and now you've found a way to do it that feels noble. That's not the same thing as being willing to fight for the mission's success." Her words hit harder than he expected. "What do you want me to say, Alina? That I'll suddenly develop a will to live? That I'll fight tooth and nail to survive the unsurvivable? I want you to promise me that you'll complete the mission no matter what. That you won't let guilt or despair interfere with saving those 300 billion lives." Thorne was quiet for a long moment, feeling the ship's systems humming around him through the neural link. "I promise," he said finally. "Whatever else happens, I'll see it through to the end." Alina nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Marcus, for what it's worth, I think the man who could feel guilt over Kepler for 3 years is exactly the kind of person who can be trusted with this mission." The Coalition fleet's jump to the galactic core was a thing of terrible beauty. Hundreds of ships translated from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming against the cosmic backdrop of Sagittarius A star. The twin black holes dominated the view screen, vast, invisible predators whose presence could only be inferred from the accretion disks of superheated matter spiraling into oblivion. And everywhere, surrounding the black holes in geometric perfection, were the ships of the dark world hegemony. Thorne had seen enemy vessels before, but never in these numbers. The fleet stretched across millions of cubic kilometers, their dark hulls absorbing the light from the accretion disks. Each ship was a study in unsettling geometry, angles that shouldn't exist in normal space, curves that hurt to follow with the naked eye. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the Redemption's communications officer and one of the few crew members who would accompany Thorne partway through the mission. "There must be 50,000 of them." 57,432, Thorne corrected, the ship's sensors feeding information directly into his consciousness through the neural link. plus approximately 12 million smaller craft, fighters, drones, support vessels. The Dark World's response to the Coalition fleet's arrival was immediate and overwhelming. Space filled with energy weapons fire as the two forces engaged across a front that spanned light hours. But the Coalition's attack was merely a diversion, a desperate attempt to mask the Redemption's approach to the galactic core. All ships commence Operation Stellar Phoenix Diversionary Protocol. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communications array. God be with you all. Thorn felt the ship respond to his thoughts, slipping between dimensions as the exotic matter shielding engaged. To external sensors, the Redemption would appear as little more than a quantum fluctuation, undetectable among the gravitational chaos surrounding the black holes. Phase drive activated, reported Chief Nakamura from the engineering station. We're officially invisible to conventional detection methods. Conventional being the operative word, Thorn murmured, guiding the ship deeper into the gravitational maelstrom. Through the neural link, he could feel the incredible forces at work around them. The twin black holes' gravitational fields creating eddies and currents in spacetime itself. The first Dark World patrol ships appeared on sensors as they descended toward the ignition coordinates. Sleek, predatory vessels that moved with unnatural grace through the gravitational maze. Thorn held his breath as they passed within a few hundred kilometers, but the exotic matter shielding held. They remained undetected. Beginning descent to ignition depth, Thorn announced. Time to target coordinates. 37 minutes. As they drew closer to the black holes, the Redemption began to experience the strange effects of extreme gravitational time dilation. Outside the ship, the universe seemed to slow to a crawl, while inside their protective bubble of warped spacetime, everything proceeded normally. It's beautiful, Park whispered, staring at the viewscreen. The accretion disks of both black holes were visible now, vast spirals of matter heated to millions of degrees by gravitational compression. Jets of plasma erupted from the poles of each black hole, creating pillars of light that stretched across interstellar distances. And deadly beyond imagination, Thorn reminded her. Those plasma jets carry enough energy to sterilize entire star systems. When the black holes merge, the resulting hypernova will make those look like candle flames. Chief Nakamura's fingers danced over her console. Quantum torpedo systems showing green across the board. Dark energy payloads are stable and ready for deployment. Sarah, I need you to monitor Dark World communications, Thorn instructed. If they detect us before we reach the ignition point. Understood. So far, their communications are consistent with normal patrol operations. No indication they've spotted us. The ship shuddered as they passed through a particularly violent gravitational shear. Thorn felt the exotic matter shielding flex and adapt, maintaining their quantum sewer position despite the incredible forces trying to tear them apart. Hull stress at 60% of theoretical maximum, Nakamura reported. We're holding together, but barely. 22 minutes to ignition coordinates, Thorn announced. Through the neural link, he could sense the ship's system straining against the environment. The Redemption was a marvel of engineering, but even it had limits. That's when the alarms began to sound. Contact, Park's voice was sharp with alarm. Dark World heavy cruiser, bearing 27 Mark V. They're altering course to intercept. On the viewscreen, one of the larger enemy vessels had broken from its formation and was moving toward their position. Its hull was a twisted amalgamation of organic curves and geometric impossibilities, and energy weapons were already charging along its flanks. They can't possibly detect us, Nakamura said, but her voice was uncertain. Unless they're not using conventional sensors, Thorn realized. The Dark World's biomechanical technology might allow them to sense quantum distortions directly. The enemy cruiser opened fire, sending streams of dark energy across their projected path. The shots passed harmlessly through normal space, but Thorn could feel them interacting with the exotic matter shielding. They're firing blind, but they're learning, he observed. Each shot is getting closer to our actual position. 15 minutes to ignition coordinates, Park reported. At current velocity, we'll reach the firing position with maybe 2 minutes to spare. That's cutting it close, Nakamura warned. If we have to maneuver to avoid enemy fire, then we don't avoid it, Thorne said grimly. We take the hits and keep flying. The mission comes first. More enemy ships were converging on their position now, filling space with weapons fire as they attempted to bracket the invisible intruder. The exotic matter shielding was designed to deflect energy weapons, but each hit sent shock waves through the ship systems. Hull stress at 80%, Nakamura called out as another barrage hammered their defenses. Shielding is holding, but the quantum field generators are starting to overload. 10 minutes to ignition coordinates. A massive blast from a dark world dreadnought struck them squarely, and Thorne felt something fundamental shift in the ship's exotic matter matrix. Warning lights flooded the bridge as systems began to fail. Shielding efficiency down to 60%, Nakamura reported. We're becoming visible on their sensors. Then let's give them something to really worry about, Thorne snarled, pushing the ship's engines to maximum power. The Redemption shot forward through the gravitational maze, abandoning stealth for speed. 5 minutes to ignition coordinates. Dark World Fleet is mobilizing. I count over 3,000 ships converging on our position. Let them come, Thorne said, his hands dancing over the neural interface controls. We only need 5 more minutes. The enemy fire was constant now, a storm of dark energy that battered the ship's failing defenses. But through it all, the Redemption pressed forward, driven by its pilot's desperate determination and the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Ignition coordinates achieved, Park announced. Quantum torpedo systems armed and ready. Thorne took a deep breath and began the firing sequence that would either save the galaxy or destroy everything they'd fought to protect. The quantum torpedoes launched in perfect sequence, each one carrying a payload of concentrated dark energy towards specific coordinates around the twin black holes' event horizons. Through the neural link, Thorne could track their progress as they navigated the twisted spacetime around the massive gravitational wells. First torpedo impact in 30 seconds, Nakamura reported. Dark energy payload is stable and responding to guidance systems. Around them, the Dark World Fleet had formed a massive sphere of firepower, all focused on the Redemption's position. The ship's exotic matter shielding was failing rapidly under the constant bombardment, but Thorne held their position with grim determination. Shielding down to 40%, Park called out. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Torpedo 1 impact, explosion confirmed, beginning destabilization of the first black hole's ergosphere. On the view screen, space around the first black hole began to ripple and distort as the dark energy explosion disrupted the delicate balance of forces near the event horizon. The accretion disk flared with sudden, violent brilliance as gravitational waves propagated outward at the speed of light. Torpedo 2 away, Thorne announced. His consciousness split between piloting the ship and monitoring the torpedo guidance systems. Time to second impact, 45 seconds. The Dark World's response was immediate and terrifying. Energy weapons that defied conventional physics tore through space around the Redemption, each shot coming closer as the enemy adapted to their targeting systems. That last hit took out the port quantum field generator, Nakamura reported. Shielding efficiency is down to 25%. Can we maintain position for the full sequence? Unknown. The exotic matter matrix is becoming increasingly unstable. Torpedo 2 impact confirmed. Both black holes are showing signs of ergosphere destabilization. Through the ship's sensors, Thorne could see the results of their handiwork. Both massive black holes were beginning to pulse with unnatural energy as their rotational fields became unstable. The very fabric of spacetime around them was starting to fray. Torpedo 3 away. This one has to hit the exact resonance point between both black holes. Dark World command ships are pulling back, Park observed. "I think they're starting to realize what we're doing." "Too late to stop it now," Thorne said grimly. "Once the resonance cascade begins, there's no way to interrupt the process." A direct hit from a dark world heavy weapon tore through the ship's weakened shielding and punched a hole through the engineering section. Alarms screamed as atmosphere vented into space, but the critical systems remained operational. "That's going to leave a mark," Nakamura said with gallows humor. "But we're still flying. Torpedo 3 impact in 15 seconds. 10, 5, impact confirmed." The explosion at the resonance point between the twin black holes was different from the others. Instead of a brief flare of energy, this detonation seemed to tear a hole in reality itself. Space-time rippled outward in visible waves, and both black holes began to pulse in synchronized rhythm. "Gravitational resonance cascade has begun," Thorne announced. "The black holes are starting to merge." "How long until hypernova ignition?" Park asked. 14 minutes, Nakamura replied, "assuming the cascade proceeds according to our models. And if it doesn't, then we've just created the galaxy's largest and most expensive fireworks display." Thorne was preparing to launch Torpedo 4 when space around them suddenly filled with massive dark world vessels. Dreadnoughts and battleships materialized from hyperspace, their twisted hulls bristling with weapons systems that belonged in nightmares. "They're throwing everything they have at us," Park observed with forced calm. "Torpedo 4 away. This one's targeted at the gravitational lens point. It should accelerate the merger process." The combined firepower of the Dark World fleet was beyond anything Thorne had ever experienced. The Redemption's exotic matter shielding simply evaporated under the assault, leaving them exposed to the full fury of weapons that violated the known laws of physics. "Hull breach on all decks," Nakamura reported. "We're losing structural integrity across the board." Torpedo 4 impact. Cascade acceleration confirmed. The black holes are beginning physical merger. Through the viewscreen, they could see the impossible sight of two supermassive black holes spiraling toward each other in an accelerating dance of destruction. The gravitational waves generated by their merger were distorting space visibly, creating interference patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Bridge, this is engineering," came a voice over the intercom. "We've lost main power. Emergency systems only." "Torpedo 5, this is the big one," Thorne announced, his hands moving over controls that responded more to thought than touch. "Maximum dark energy payload targeted at the merger point. Time to hypernova ignition. 8 minutes, Nakamura called out. "Assuming Torpedo 5 hits its target." The ship lurched as another barrage struck home, and Thorne felt something fundamental break in the exotic matter matrix. The neural link began to fade and he struggled to maintain control of the torpedo guidance systems. "Come on," he whispered to the ship, "just a little longer." Torpedo 5 impact. Yes, direct hit on the merger point. The black holes are beginning catastrophic collapse. The viewscreen suddenly blazed with light as the twin black holes completed their merger in a cosmic collision that released more energy than a billion supernovas. But this was only the beginning. The real hypernova was still building toward critical mass. 6 minutes to peak intensity, Nakamura reported. All remaining torpedoes need to be deployed before then. Thorne launched torpedoes 6 and 7 in rapid succession, each one designed to destabilize specific gravitational fields around the merging black holes. The Dark World fleet was pulling back now, their commanders finally understanding the magnitude of what was about to happen. "They're retreating," Park announced with savage satisfaction. "The entire fleet is breaking formation and heading for minimum safe distance." "Too bad they won't make it," Thorne said grimly. "Nothing within 50 light-years is going to survive what's coming." Torpedoes 6 and 7 impact confirmed. Gravitational field destabilization is proceeding ahead of schedule. The merged black hole was now pulsing with barely contained energy, its event horizon expanding and contracting in rhythmic waves that sent gravitational shocks through the surrounding space. The very stars seemed to flicker as spacetime itself bent and twisted around the cosmic catastrophe they had unleashed. 4 minutes to hypernova ignition. Torpedoes 8 through 12 are the final sequence. They'll trigger the actual explosion. Marcus, Nakamura said quietly, the ship won't survive the ignition. The exotic matter shielding is completely gone, and we're held together by prayer and emergency force fields. I know. Thorne's voice was steady as he prepared the final torpedo sequence. Sarah Kim, it's time for you to go. Go where? Park asked. The escape pods won't survive the gravitational fields out there. Admiral Chen had a contingency plan. There's a quantum tunnel generator in the rear cargo bay. It can transport you back to the fleet's position. Nakamura shook her head. We're not leaving you alone, Marcus. Yes, you are. That's an order from your mission commander. Thorne's voice carried the authority of a man who had commanded fleets in dozens of battles. The tunnel generator can only transport 2 people, and it'll take both of you to carry the mission data back to the fleet. The mission data's already been transmitted, Park protested. The backup data, Thorne clarified. In case something goes wrong with the primary transmission, the Council needs to know exactly what happened here. It was a lie, and they all knew it. But it was the kind of necessary lie that allowed heroes to be heroic and martyrs to face their fate with dignity. 2 minutes to hypernova ignition, Nakamura announced reluctantly. We need to go now if we're going to use the quantum tunnel. Park and Nakamura gathered their equipment and headed for the cargo bay, pausing at the bridge entrance. Marcus, Park said quietly, for what it's worth, I think you found your redemption. Thank you, Sarah. Both of you, it's been an honor. They disappeared into the ship's corridors, leaving Thorne alone on the bridge with the weight of the galaxy's fate in his hands. Alone on the bridge of the dying ship, Marcus Thorne prepared to ignite a hypernova that would reshape the galaxy. The merged black hole pulsed before him, a wound in reality itself that grew more unstable with each passing second. Through the failing neural link, he could feel the redemption slowly coming apart around him. Torpedo 8 away, he announced to the empty bridge. His voice echoed strangely in the damaged space, competing with the sound of failing systems and the distant roar of cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. The quantum tunnel generator activated in the cargo bay, its distinctive harmonic resonance telling him that Park and Nakamura had made their escape. Now he was truly alone, a single man balanced on the edge of annihilation, with the power to save or damn everything he had ever known. 1 minute, 30 seconds to hypernova ignition. Torpedo 9 launched into the gravitational maelstrom, its dark energy payload primed to trigger the final cascade. Through the ship's sensors, Thorne watched the Dark World fleet continuing its desperate retreat. Some of the faster vessels might actually reach minimum safe distance, but the massive command ships and planetary-scale constructs would be caught in the blast. Torpedo 9 impact confirmed. Hypernova cascade at 95% of critical mass. The merged black hole was no longer black. It pulsed with energies that transcended the visible spectrum, casting impossible shadows across space itself. The gravitational waves it generated were strong enough to be felt as physical vibrations through the ship's hull. Torpedo 10 away. Come on, baby, just 2 more. The ship lurched as another section of the hull failed, and Thorne felt the neural link flicker and fade completely. He was flying blind now, relying on manual controls and instruments that sparked and failed even as he watched them. 1 minute to hypernova ignition. Through the viewscreen, he could see Dark World ships dying as they fled. The gravitational waves from the unstable black hole were tearing them apart, crushing their exotic hulls like paper. It was a preview of what was coming for everything within the blast radius. Torpedo 10 impact. Yes. Critical mass achieved at 98%. The final 2 torpedoes would push the hypernova past the point of no return. Once they hit their targets, nothing in the universe could stop the explosion that would follow. Torpedo 11 away. 30 seconds to ignition. Thorne thought about Kepler 442b as he watched the torpedo streak toward its target. 3 billion people who had died because he chose military necessity over human lives. For 3 years, their faces had haunted his dreams. Their voices had whispered accusations in the darkness of his cell. Torpedo 11 impact confirmed. Critical mass at 99.5%. 15 seconds to ignition. Now, in these final moments, Thorne found something he hadn't expected: peace. Not the peace of absolution. He would carry the weight of Kepler's dead to whatever came after this. But the peace of knowing that his last act would be one of creation rather than destruction, of salvation rather than damnation. Torpedo 12 away. Final sequence initiated. The last torpedo streaked through space toward the pulsing wound that had once been 2 supermassive black holes. Around it, spacetime itself was beginning to unravel as forces beyond imagination prepared to remake the galaxy's core. 5 seconds to impact. 4, 3, 2, 1. Torpedo 12 struck its target at the exact moment the hypernova reached critical mass. The explosion that followed defied every word in human language. It was not simply bright. It was illumination itself given form. It was not simply powerful. It was the raw force of creation unleashed. Marcus Thorne had time for one final thought as the wave front reached the redemption. He thought about Dr. Vasquez's words about balancing the weight of his actions. 3 billion lives lost, 300 billion saved. It wasn't forgiveness. Nothing could forgive what he had done. But perhaps it was enough. The hypernova consumed the ship, the dark world fleet, and everything else within 50 light-years of the galactic core. It burned for 17 hours, visible to every inhabited world in the galaxy as a new star that outshone all others. When it finally faded, the dark world hegemony was gone, their command structure obliterated, and their vast armadas reduced to scattered refugees. 5 years later, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the Memorial Garden on New Geneva, watching children play among the flowering trees that had been planted in memory of those lost in the war. At the garden's center was a simple monument, a pillar of black stone inscribed with names. At the top of the list, in letters carved deep enough to last forever, was a single name: Marcus Thorne. He would have hated this, Admiral Chen said, joining Elena beside the monument. Sarah had aged in the years since the war's end, but the weight of command no longer pressed down on her shoulders. The memorial, Elena asked. Being remembered as a hero, he never saw himself that way. Perhaps that's what made him one. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the children play. These were the generation that would grow up in a galaxy free from the dark world's influence, a galaxy where organic life could flourish again among the stars. The Council is officially declassifying the Stellar Phoenix files next month, Chen mentioned. The full story will be public record. All of it, including Kepler. Elena nodded. It was right that people should know the full truth, both the darkness and the light, the fall and the redemption. Marcus had been neither pure villain nor perfect hero, but something more complex and ultimately more human. Do you think he found what he was looking for? Chen asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. I think he found something better than what he was looking for. He was seeking punishment, absolution, an end to guilt. What he found was purpose. A small girl ran up to the monument, her mother following close behind. The child stared up at the carved names with wide, curious eyes. Mama, who were all these people? Heroes, sweetheart. They were heroes who saved us all. The girl nodded solemnly, then placed a small flower at the base of the monument before running back to her games. Elena smiled, watching her go. You know, she said to Chen, I think Marcus would have liked that, being remembered not for how he died but for why he chose to live. Above them, the stars shone down with gentle light, no longer threatened by the darkness that had once sought to consume them all. And in the galactic core, where twin black holes had once danced their deadly waltz, a new nebula was forming, a cloud of gas and dust that would someday birth new stars, new worlds, new possibilities. The universe, as always, continued its ancient work of transformation, turning endings into beginnings, destruction into creation, and the weight of one man's guilt into the salvation of countless worlds yet to be born. In the end, perhaps that was redemption enough.